A Russian military transport plane has crashed in the Belgorod region in the south of the country, close to the border with Ukraine. A video posted on social media appears to show the moment of the incident. The Russian officials said that all the people on board, reportedly including 65 Ukrainian prisoners of war, have been killed. The Russian Foreign Ministry has blamed Kyiv for downing the plane. Let's get more. We are joined by DW correspondent Nick Connolly in Kyiv and DW's Jennifer Pahlke reporting from Riga. Jennifer, I'd like to begin with you. What is the Russian side saying about the crash?
Well, Sarah, Russia's foreign ministry has called the crash an act of terrorism, harshly blaming and criticizing Kyiv for killing its own citizens. The ministry claims that Ukrainian armed forces, have fired missiles at the plane from the Kharkiv region. According to Russia's Ministry of Defense, the Russian military observed the launch of 2 Ukrainian missiles on their radar. Earlier today, Viktor Bondarev, who's a senator and former chief of the Russian Air Force, stated in an interview that it is 100% clear that the plane was shut down. He also said that the crew was able to report an external impact before crashing. The Russian Ministry of Defense has confirmed that all passengers on the plane were killed, and RT's editor-in-chief has published a list with all 65 names of Ukrainian prisoners of war on board the aircraft.
Nick, what are we hearing meantime from Ukraine?
I think it's really important to stress that this is still a very unclear breaking news situation with lots of contradictory versions being voiced. The Ukrainian side, for its part, we've only heard from one of the intelligence agencies saying that indeed an exchange of prisoners was planned for today. We haven't heard more. That space has obviously been taken up by experts, people claiming to have sources in the military, claiming that these were instead flights that were transporting military equipment, missiles maybe. Other people claiming that this is some kind of Russian attempt to kill Ukrainian prisoners of war, create a kind of issue for the Zelensky government with their own public opinion. Certainly in a free society like Ukraine's, unlike Russia, the relatives of people who are held captive are a serious political force. They've been protesting for a long time. They're reaching out to decision makers. So this is certainly a worrying situation for Volodymyr Zelensky, and probably the reason why we haven't heard anything yet. Because even if it isn't these prisoners of war that have been killed as part of this downing of a plane, it's still a very worrying situation for all the families of people affected, and we understand the government is trying to reach out to those families to at least establish some lines of communication.
DW's Nick Connolly in Kyiv and Jennifer Pahlke in Riga. Thank you so much to both of you. And I spoke earlier also with Marina Miron, a military analyst with the War Studies Department at King's College London. She gave me her assessment of the crash announcement.
Good day. Well, it's a very complicated situation, and it's too soon to tell what exactly happened. And I think an independent investigation will need to look at the crash site and will need to determine whether there were bodies or something else on that plane, because it seems like a plausible statement that there were prisoners of war, and the Ukrainian military intelligence had Yusuf confirmed that indeed an exchange was planned for today. The Russians released a passenger list, so all of those things need to be confirmed. But again, as I said, by an independent body, not by Ukrainians or the Russians, because even the Ukrainian sources have changed their tune over the past few hours, first claiming that the Ukrainian military was behind this, and then retracting their statement. There is a possibility that the Ukrainian military also got wrong intelligence. They were actually thinking that there were missiles. So it needs to be investigated further before any conclusions can be made.
Can you drill down into another one of these claims? Because there are some Russian lawmakers claiming that the attack was committed by Ukraine using a U.S.-supplied Patriot missile. I mean, they were very specific about that. How would one go about verifying that? Is there a way of quickly doing it?
Well, there is a way of doing it, of course, and there are a few possibilities. So some of the claims made by Kartapolov, for instance, is that it was either a U.S. or a German-made missile. If we look at the distance from where the plane fell to the Ukrainian border, yes, the story about using the Patriot missile could be true. just looking at the range of the missile and at the distance about 80 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, bearing in mind that a Patriot system is a mobile system, so it can move. So basically what needs to be done is look for any sort of parts of that alleged missile on the crash site in order to be able to verify. Also, the site where this missile has been fired from needs to be inspected as well. That would be on the Ukrainian territory. So it requires a very complex investigation with both sides working together, as ironic as it might seem, in order to investigate what actually happened. And I see it as being very difficult because we have seen similar incidents where a Ukrainian artillery missile misfired, and the first reports were stating that it was the Russians until 3 weeks later an independent commission investigated the crash site and the area surrounding it to find burned earth as a sign that an artillery system was there. So it is a very complicated matter because we don't have an independent party that could be deployed and could be allowed to investigate those sites.
Marina, and I'd just like to ask you briefly before we go as well, because you have followed this war and the situation on the front line so closely. Can you just bring us up to date and perhaps give us your impressions on where things stand right now? I mean, there's been so much talk about it being at a stalemate. What are your big takeaways at this point?
Well, my takeaway is that it's not a stalemate, and it hasn't been a stalemate. The activity has reduced for a while, but now we're seeing Russian forces trying to essentially surround Avdiivka. We have seen some claims that they took villages in the southwest and in the north. So the situation is very difficult there, and there is a village allegedly taken in the south of Bakhmut. So it seems like a push along multiple lines of contact with the Ukrainian troops. And what the Russians are trying to do here is use the time, because the Ukrainians don't have enough manpower or artillery shells, as Jens Stoltenberg has pointed out, in order to offer an effective resistance to the Russian push.
Marina Miron, military analyst, with that take on the situation. Thank you so much for joining us to share that perspective.